The House Committee on Government Operations will come to order. Mr. Chair, can you take the roll call, please?
Chair DeGold.
Here.
Representatives Harris.
Yes. Here.
Vanderwall.
Present.
Fitzgerald.
Here.
McFall.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 members present, a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, before we get started here, I would like to remind everybody if they plan on speaking on the bills on our agenda today to please fill out the white card and turn it into our clerk. Representative Vanderwall moves to approve the minutes from our March 26 meeting. Without objection, so ordered. Okay, first order of the day was we're going to be voting on House Bills 4233 and 4234, which we heard testimony on a couple weeks ago. But first, Vice Chair Harris moves to adopt the H3 substitute on House Bill 4233. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
On the motion to adopt, Chair DeGold.
Yes.
Representatives Harris.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Pass.
McFall.
Pass.
Mr. Chair, you have 3 yeas, 0 nays, 2 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, the H3 substitute is adopted. Okay, I'm going to read in a couple cards for these bills before we take our vote. Not wanting to speak, neutral. With the changes, Brad Ward of Michigan Realtors. And not wanting to speak, neutral on the bills, is Matt Sowash of MLC representing Michigan Land Title Association. Okay, now Vice Chair Harris moved to report House Bill 4233 as substitute H3 with recommendation. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair DeGold.
Yes.
Representatives Harris.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Pass.
McFall.
Pass.
Mr. Chair, you have 3 yeas, 0 nays, 2 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, House Bill 4233 is reported with recommendation. Okay, next, Vice Chair Harris moves to adopt a H1 substitute for House Bill 4234. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
On the motion to adopt, Chair DeGold.
Yes.
Representatives Harris.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Pass.
McFall.
Pass.
Mr. Chair, you have 3 yeas, 0 nays, 2 pass. The motion prevails.
Thank you. The H1 substitute is adopted. And lastly, Vice Chair Harris moves to report House Bill 4234 as substitute H1 with recommendation. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
On the motion to report, Chair DeGold.
Yes.
Representatives Harris.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Pass.
McFall.
Pass.
Mr. Chair, you have 3 yeas, 0 nays, 2 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, House Bill 4234 is reported as recommended. Okay, now we'll be hearing testimony on House Bills 4260 and 4261. These bills are sponsored by Representative Harris and Representative Farhat. But first, Vice Chair Harris moves to adopt an H1 substitute for House Bill 4260. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
On the motion to adopt, Chair DeGold.
Yes.
Representatives Harris.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, the H1 substitute is adopted. Okay, next, Vice Chair Harris moves to adopt H1 substitute for House Bill 4261. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
On the motion to adopt, Chair DeGold.
Yes.
Representatives Harris.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, that H1 substitute is adopted. Okay, welcome, representatives. If you want to proceed up to the testimony table and go ahead and proceed when you're ready.
Good morning. So Chair Begol and members of the committee, thank you for taking this up this morning, and it's a pleasure to be here, although I didn't have to walk very far. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in strong support of our bills. House Bills 4260 and 4261, which is a bipartisan plan to tackle the wave of violent crime that continues to cause concern for Michigan communities. You know, before I had the honor of serving in the House, I spent my career in law enforcement. And as a matter of fact, our esteemed chair here and I started our careers together many years ago. And it's great to see us come full circle. So I still appreciate you, Chair. We both held the hands of countless victims and sat with families who have lost loved ones to senseless violence. We worked shoulder to shoulder with the brave men and women who put on that uniform every day, knowing they may have to risk everything to keep somebody else safe. So when I say this crisis is personal to me, I really mean it. And that's why I'm proud to be a sponsor alongside my fantastic colleague and partner here, Rep. Farhat. And this is what true bipartisan problem solving looks like. It's recognizing a serious problem and then coming together to offer a serious solution. So House Bills 4260 and 4261 create a public safety and violence prevention trust fund, a dedicated and accountable investment in public safety, community violence intervention, and victim support. By depositing $115 million a year from the sales tax revenue, we can give our communities the tools they need to fight back against violent crime and save lives. And I'm going to turn it over to Rep. Farhat to tell you exactly how that works.
Thank you, Representative Harris. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, well, one of you and Sheriff Bagall, I always call him Sheriff Bagall, he just looks so much better, so I don't know what he did that.
He wore brown.
He wore brown, that's right. But I want to, first start with the history of this package. Last year, we worked together, and it was actually the committee chaired by John Fitzgerald that we got this package moved out of. And before me here was last year's substitute. I don't remember this, Mike. This is a House Bill H19. It's an H19. It took us 19 versions to get this right on the House floor.
Almost a record.
I think it's a record. And they're saying it's a record, so it's a record. An H19, because we worked together and we got it done. This package builds off of the progress we made last year. So $75 million goes to locals, right? That goes to our cities, townships, villages. That gives them money to use for the work that they know that's best. They're closest to the pain. They're closest to the issues impacting their community. And we take 2% off the top for a statewide community violence intervention program. So groups across our state can apply and practice and deploy interventions to disrupt crime. CVI groups are some of the most effective tools that we have in public safety. They get at the root cause of crime. In the city of Detroit, when we saw, for the first time, I think since 1960-something, the largest drop in homicides, and I know they're here, they'll talk about this, CVI groups were part of the big reason why they saw this drop in homicide rates. They do the work, they're proven to be effective, and so we're putting aside money for that as well. We're also putting aside 2% for our crime victims. We know that's a real issue, and we know that part of public safety is making sure that the victims are supported after the fact. So money will go from that $75 million pot to communities based on their percentage of violent crime. So it's really simple. If you have 1% of violent crime, you get 1% of the fund, capped at 25%. This isn't a blank check we're writing. There's accountability measures here, that if you fail to bring down violent crime, you lose funding, and we reward communities that are bringing down violent crime, right? So if you're making investments that are working, we're going to reward you so you can continue making those investments and continue dropping your violent crime. And we also include our sheriffs. This was something that I wanted to do last year that I'm glad we're doing now, is we're including our county sheriff's partners who do a lot of work that fill in the gaps that local police departments may not be able to do, or in some cases, the work is entirely on the county sheriff's departments. And so we're able to include them in as well with the remainder of the fund. So there's $115 million, 75 goes to locals, 40 million goes to our county sheriff's partners based on their departmental size of officers, right? The bigger the departmental size, the more work they're doing, the more of a emphasis on those resources they're doing. And so it only makes sense to use a model like that. But again, I want to say something, folks, and this is a refreshing moment where we're sitting in a room where we have my Republican colleagues, my Democratic colleagues, and we're able to cut through the rhetoric and noise of working together and get something meaningful done. This package is going to save lives. Last year, I was proud again, where it took a while. It took 19 drafts of a substitute to get to this point. But we worked together. We moved the package with over 80 votes in the House last year, and we came back and we kept the package essentially materially the same. And that's because we worked deliberately. And I think it's a refreshing moment that we all should be proud of ourselves in being in, and that we're able to cut through the partisan noise, we're able to cut through the rhetoric that sometimes distracts us from doing the big things that the people of Michigan want us to do. This is, in my opinion, one of the #1 issues that I campaigned on when I first came to office. Moms who are scared to let their kids play on their front lawn, parents who are worried that their kids will fall into a spiral of violence. This package doesn't just put more cops on the streets. It gets to the root cause of crime. It gets to the community so you can invest and make really the true investments that our people in our state are asking for. And so I'm glad that we're doing this today, and I really am glad to have a partner like Representative Harris here who sees the value in doing this. And I look forward to the discussion here before the committee.
And it's, this is a passion. It's not just something that, somebody's asked us to do. This is something, Rep. McFall, you and I worked on another public safety issue, and it very similar in need, right? It addressed more of the fire side, where we're addressing now the criminal side. So I made a couple examples just for the committee so you can kind of feel a little bit more of what it's maybe like in your home districts. But Chair Begol, Owasso is probably looking at about $160,000 or $176,000 that they would get from this, and nearby Flint for you would be like $1.9 million the city could expect out of this. For myself, Waterford Township is looking at about $261,000 to add to their violence prevention. Rep. Vanderwall, Ludington would be looking at about $50,000, and nearby Muskegon, almost $500,000. Rep. Fitzgerald, or Minority Vice Chair Fitzgerald, Grand Rapids be looking at $3.2 million. Rep. McFall, Warren be looking at about $1.1 million. Just so you have an idea, we're not talking about funds that are not going to move the needle. These are funds that are real investments in our communities. And it's not about politics, as Rep. Farhat said, it's about people. It's about real families, it's about real neighborhoods, and it's about real law enforcement officers who need backup. And not just in the field, but here in Lansing from us. So again, we've seen this plan gain broad support before. We expect it to continue. And with Speaker Hall making this a priority and has strong support and dedication for our communities, I think the momentum is there between last year and now to get this across the finish line. And so, I know each one of you personally, and I know your feelings on public safety and the value of reducing violence in our communities, and I just hope that we can work together and move this forward.
And I want to add one more thing. The numbers that my colleague mentioned don't include the distribution for the sheriff's departments.
Correct.
So if you're in a more rural county, your sheriff's department gets more funding as well. That's one of the reasons why I thought it was so important. We included our sheriffs in this, and we are doing that now. So we've actually enhanced the package in that way, and that this revenue is in addition to what they're already spending. So we're not taking this out of their revenue sharing that they're getting already. We're not taking this out of the city's general fund. No, we're saying here's additional revenue for you to try something proven. Right? At the end of the day, this package is putting the trust in local leaders who are closest to the pain to make the right decisions around public safety and violence prevention, and that's what this does.
Yeah. I think we're both happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
Yes. I do have autographed copies of this if folks would like, by the way. I do have autographed copies. I believe the Republican, your folks last year wanted a couple, so.
Well, Representatives, thanks for all the hard work you guys have put into these package of bills. I know I certainly appreciate it, and my community does. Looks like we do have a question from Representative McFall.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you guys for working on this. This is important. I was kind of mad that it didn't make it across the finish line last term, but here we are again. The only thing that I have a concern with, which you just touched on, is revenue sharing. Because every time we give something to local municipalities, and then we have a need for road funding and all these other things, and they're like, well, we're already giving them this, so we can cut back on some revenue sharing. And that's what concerns me about things like this, because I heard those discussions even last term when we were in majority about some of those things. And so how can we make sure that that doesn't happen, where we're
So
We are using this, even though we're not taking it from revenue sharing, it'll be used as an argument.
So one thing, again, I like to give credit, and I like to look back kind of at people that did it. So last year, House Appropriations Chair Angela Whitwer made this a priority. She drew a line in the sand and said the House budget has to have the $75 million for the Public Safety and Violence Prevention Trust Fund. So I give her a lot of credit because in the budget that we passed, there was money already put aside for this fund. Unfortunately, the bills didn't make it to the governor's desk. So the money's sitting in an account somewhere in Lansing right now, the $75 million. So we already budgeted for it. We'll have to find the extra $40 million for the sheriffs. But I think, I'm confident in my capacity working with Chair Bolin and Speaker Hall and the governor's office that we can find it. But that first $75 million is already there. We paid for it last year. We just need to move the bills to release the funds. So hopefully that alleviates a little bit of your concerns. And again, it's something that, I give credit to Chair Whitwer on. Last year, she fought really hard for this. And she got, the down payment on this package.
Okay, Representative Vanderwall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank both of you for bringing these bills forward. A quick question I have in today's struggling times inside law enforcement, I happen to have a question. I have a community right now that, because of budgetary concerns, has had to put their police department on ice, basically. My question is, if they're not active at this time, are they still allowed to receive these dollars so that it could potentially reactivate that department?
I would say yes. It's, so are they not, and we can talk more offline too in the granular details, but I don't think there's any carve out or prohibition for maybe a temporary freeze on a department. If Oakland County or your county is taking over for a while, I think those funds would just follow the formula here and either go to the county or whatnot until they reestablish the police department, and then it would become active again for them.
The first grantee, so like let's use Pontiac as an example. Pontiac doesn't have a police department. They contract with Oakland County. They would still be for their money, that $75 million, they would still be the first grantee of that money, and then they can decide if they want to contract and pass it up, or if they, for example, want to open up a department, they could decide on that, or if they want to split it. But the local unit of government and that $75 million is the first grantee. So they have some flexibility within the confines of the bill to decide if they want to start or contract up or whatnot.
Very good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Fitzgerald?
Thank you, and thank you both for bringing forward this important legislation. Once again, we did work very hard on this last term and saw that come out with a number of drafts, but a number of opportunities to, I think, include stakeholder input from across the state, seeing that this is a statewide impact. I share some concerns with my colleague here about revenue sharing and ensuring that services like human resources that our public safety departments do utilize continue to remain in effect and are robustly funded to ensure that we do have good resources on the ground. But my question today pertains to the cap or the maximum available dollars to a municipality being 25%. We had some conversation about this last term. I just want to kind of reignite that conversation. Being 25%, how is that intended to, I guess, properly reflect, the needs of certain communities? Obviously, we have some larger communities, Grand Rapids being one of those in this state, with the needs of other communities, if you will, downstream, right? That being in Owasso, per se. How is that 25%, intended to reflect both the need, but also maybe the proportionality of both population and violent crime?
I think the 25%, again, like you said, is a cap. It's to keep one community from surpassing that and soaking up all the funds, right? But other than that, it's based upon those crime stats. So we know some communities have higher crime rates than others, and that can affect that. We just want to make sure that that needle doesn't move past, I don't want to say an egregious amount, but a very large amount that's going to soak up funds from the other communities. Our hope is that by doing this, those communities are going to have the funds they need to reduce the violent crime, and then, hopefully all the ancillary issues that causes can hope reduce budget issues everywhere. You want to add anything?
I'll add this. The formula starts by distributing on violent crime, but over time it rewards communities that are bringing down the violence. So even if a community is at that cap, at some point, if they fail to bring down violent crime, they will see a reduction. And what we'll do instead is we will invest more in communities that are bringing down that trend, right? So for your Grand Rapids, for example, if Grand Rapids is successful in bringing down violent crime, and you got a mayor over there who I know is really dynamic, who's able to bring down the violent crime, working with his partners, they would get rewarded over time for that by this formula, so that that concern of who's at the cap and not, well, at some point it's immaterial about the cap, right? Because the formula starts to shift in rewarding communities that are bringing down their violent crime. But also, I'll just say it, right? If we didn't have the cap, there's one community that would exceed 25% easily, right? And so the cap really is set in place so that there's enough for everybody else in a meaningful way, while also being kind of fair to that community that's struggling with this crime. And they've done a good job bringing on, again, they're okay with the performance metric, because you'll hear from them later today, they're aggressive at bringing this down. They collaborate really well with their regional partners, but the cap really is more so in place, I think, on the first go around, and then over time the formula will reward performance, and it'll equal out, it'll balance out.
Yeah, this is just an area I'd love to just continue conversation. I'm not saying that 25% isn't correct. I think that there's a conversation again around population, violent crime, the proportionality within the state, and ensuring that if another $10,000 can go to an Owasso or to, I came from Grand Ledge, right? There's still some heartland boy in me somewhere, not necessarily from the big city,
That
but
folksy charms, I can see it.
yeah, exactly. The point is, I think that there's an opportunity just to have a broader conversation around that mark and how we can continue to help
And I welcome
communities
those
up and down.
conversations, yeah. I'm sure Representative Harris does as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't see any further questions from the representatives. Thanks for your testimony. Very well done. Next, I'm going to read in some cards. I see we have a number of other people wanting to speak. I'd just like to remind everybody if they could limit it to 3 to 5 minutes in the interest of time. The first one will be Chief Todd Bettison of the Detroit Police Department. Chief, welcome. You may begin whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair Bagol. Well, I would like to first start off by saying good morning and thank you for allowing me to speak today. This honorable body, so Chair Bagol, Vice Chair Harris, State Rep Farhat, and to the rest of the committee, thank you. This funding, House Bill 4261, 4260, is going to allow the city of Detroit to continue its CVI program, violence intervention program, our shot stoppers. The funding will be sustainable, predictable, which will also allow us to hire approximately an additional 45 police officers. Our program in the city of Detroit, our community violence intervention program, has been highly successful, very successful. We started the program back in the fall of 2023 with $10 million in federal stimulus money. However, that money at the end of 2025 will be exhausted. And so the current Shot Stoppers program, community violence intervention, which you will hear more about from some other members here, we have 6 groups. They have been attributed to helping us achieve record drops in our homicides by 45% when we closed out the year. We went from in the high 300s to closing the year out with 203 homicides, the lowest number since 1965 on record. Our other violent crime has dropped as well. I repeat and emphasize that this program is successful. The money is running out. I commend Mayor Mike Duggan, our city council, for including $4.4 million for our CVI program in next year's budget, but more is needed. The passage of this bill will save lives in Detroit, but also it will save lives in Grand Rapids, Flint, Taylor, Ann Arbor, Dearborn, Benton Harbor, and all across Michigan. I close by asking you to support the Public Safety Trust Fund because it's public safety for all. The bill will allow chiefs of police, sheriffs, mayors to use the funds in a flexible way that best serves their communities. In the city of Detroit, we've invested in cops by giving them historic raises. We've invested in technology. And we're also investing in community as well with our community violence interrupters that helps on the preventative end, which this bill encompasses as well. So regardless of who you are, regardless of where you live, everyone that I talk to, we all agree citizens want enhanced public safety and strong law enforcement. And so we plan to do both in the city of Detroit if this bill passes, and we'll be able to sustain our community violence intervention programs, and we'll also be able to hire additional officers, those 45 officers, with the assurance that we wouldn't have to lay them off when grant funding ends. And with that, I thank you all for allowing me to speak today, and I'm open to take any questions that you may have.
Thanks very much, Chief. I applaud the effort that you made in Detroit. You know, the Beagles have some long roots down there, over 100 years. My grandmother and granddad and my dad and uncle all grew up on East Grand Boulevard near Jefferson. And I've seen what Detroit used to look like, and I see the comeback that the city's making. I know it's got some more work to do, but thanks for the effort that you have made, and we hope that we're able to get this through, and it'll improve things even more. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
looks like Representative Harris has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. More of a statement. So, Chief, again, we appreciate your continued support. We know you've been a huge advocate, you and the mayor, on this issue, and you hosted us recently, so we can talk with law enforcement partners from around the state, and the input that you folks have made and that the other chiefs and sheriffs have made have really crafted this legislation, and we've made a lot of tweaks based upon the recommendations that you've given us, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Harris.
Okay, not seeing any further questions. Thanks for making the trip all the way up here.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, next we'd like to hear from Chief Shaheen of the Dearborn Police Department. Chief, are you present? Welcome, sir.
I'm going to sit next to my twin.
That's great.
Oh, look at that. It's loser, huh? Yeah, that's how you know it's fun.
Is it ready to go?
Yeah, you're good to go.
All right. Good morning, and thank you for having me here today. Chair, members of the committee, thank you again for this opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Issa Shaheen, and I serve as the Chief of Police in the city of Dearborn. I'm here today to voice my strong support for House Bills 4260 and 4261, which would establish a public safety trust fund, a long overdue investment in the safety and well-being of our communities. This legislation recognizes a simple truth, that public safety is not one size fits all. From Dearborn to Detroit and to communities all across our state, the challenges that we face may vary, but the need for responsive, accountable, and well-resourced public safety remains constant. These bills would give local departments like ours the flexibility to address the unique safety needs of our residents, whether that's increasing officer presence in high-risk areas or investing in non-traditional community partnerships, or expanding innovative programs that prevent violence before it starts. Now, we've seen firsthand that when local agencies are trusted with resources and held accountable, we can deliver results. Programs like Detroit Shot Stoppers show the power of community-rooted solutions. In Dearborn, we would use these resources to hire more staff and additional officers to enhance our ability to respond quickly, engage proactively, and keep our neighborhoods safe. This is more than just funding. It's a commitment to public safety that's smart, targeted, and responsive to needs on the ground. I'll just be honest, policing's expensive. Communities want well-staffed, well-trained, and well-resourced departments, and that costs money. And so this investment allows us to do that. On behalf of our officers, our city, and our residents, I urge you to support this legislation. Thank you so very much.
And then, Chief, just real quick, I'm so sorry, Chair, with your permission. I would love for you to talk about some of the innovative things you're doing in Dearborn, policing in the 21st century. Because I think a lot of people have a static image of what policing looks like. I think in Dearborn, like other departments, there's a lot of innovation going on. If you can talk about
Sure,
that.
thank you for the opportunity. We've had some significant reductions in crime over last year. A lot of that was done with the investments that we've made in technology. Whether that's license plate reading cameras, drones, we have an investigative technical unit. I'm sure Todd Bettison, Chief Bettison would agree, like every significant case that we have in our city goes to that office, that unit, whether that's looking at cell phones or computers, and that all costs money. These software packages, that technology, it's just expensive. And so I contribute it first and foremost to the officers that work in our department, the hard work they put into, but coupling that with technology in the 21st century is just so critical. And for a lot of communities that are smaller than ours, it's tough to do that. And so I imagine it allows these chiefs to look at their departments individually and ask themselves where they need to improve it. And so it's just such a great package to allow for that flexibility for local communities as well.
Okay, that's great to hear some of those advancements you're making. Thank you. And thanks for coming up today.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Okay, next we'll hear from Mayor Woolley, who wants to testify in support of the bill from the City of Taylor. Good morning.
Good morning.
If you want to
Yes,
introduce who's with you here today.
absolutely. I'd like to, first of all, thank you all for having us, and I would like to I'd like to welcome and my chief from the city of Taylor, Chief John Blair, who has greatly served the city that I was born and raised in for 35 years. So please welcome Chief Blair as well. So.
Thank you for having me.
Chair, I would just, this is my first time here to Lansing. Again, I would like to thank each and every one of you for having me here. I'm here to definitely speak in my support of 4260 and 4261. I would definitely like to give kudos to Rep. Harris and Rep. Farhat for working together and coming with this. This is very important to the city of Taylor. I just write down a few bullet points. I always speak from the heart. And Rep. Farhat isn't even my rep, but he heard me speaking about this and invited me to come down here and talk about it. Like so many people have touched on, policing is getting expensive. And you know, the city of Taylor's motto is kind of retain and recruit. We want to be able to be marketable. I believe in technology and equipment because I believe that the residents of the city of Taylor owe our officers the equipment to keep them just as safe as we expect them to keep us safe. So that all costs money. And we're using those funds that we have now to do that. I think Taylor is doing a great leading the way in technology and equipment. We are actually one of probably, I'd say, the leading force behind drone technology in downriver. We have an incredible drone technology program. A lot of municipalities are coming to us to learn about it. We're using it because we do need police officers. You know, as you guys know, everybody's down, and everybody seems to want to try to take everybody else as police officers. So, you know, which is causing contracts to get higher and higher. We just passed a good contract in the city of Taylor, which did increase the amount of officers, and we do believe we will fill our ranks by within the next 6 months. But if we receive this money, we will be able to add more officers on top of that. So we're very hopeful for this. But the drone technology will also not put such a drain on our resources to where, you know, sometimes you get calls where people are just, hey, we got a bunch of kids hanging out here, we don't know what's going on. A drone, our drone program can now send a drone there before we even dispatch an officer over there to see if it's even really worth something that an officer needs to be at and stuff. So we're doing great with that. We also have a Star Chase program that it's literally like a darting program that when a chase starts to ensue, our officers can pull up really quick, shoot a dart, and then pull off the chase. That saves lives all around. In that way, we can just track it eventually. So we're using that technology as well. So again, these are additional costs that we're doing, but we also believe it keeps our residents safe, it keeps our officers safe. So these are just things that we're continuing to do in our city to just kind of keep our officers and our residents safe, which in the city of Taylor, knocking doors, you know, when anybody runs for office, they always knock doors. Public safety is the #1 priority in Taylor. And yes, I would always appreciate more road money, but public safety is getting more and more expensive. And public safety is still my #1 priority, not just as a mayor, as a resident of the city of Taylor. And so I hope that everyone will get this passed and take care of the municipalities in this state, because it's becoming an issue where less and less people are going into law enforcement, and we're needing them more and more than ever. And I appreciate each and every one of them that are going into this, and I'm trying to make it a family atmosphere in the city of Taylor, and my chief is doing an excellent job doing that as well. So again, I want to thank you all for having me here today. It's been a great experience. I'm a rookie, so I apologize if I sound foolish, but if you have any questions for me or my chief, I'd be happy to answer it. Any? Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate hearing from you today, and I'll have to agree with you. I have acquaintances that have had interactions with the police department and had very complimentary, so you're doing a fine job down there. Thank you.
His daughter also plays at Michigan State.
Oh, great.
Okay, next, wanting to speak in support of the bill is Anthony Hall and Alex Nolte of the Police Officers Association of Michigan. May take a minute for them to get there. I believe they're in the overflow room. Yep, here they come. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning. Thank you.
Chair Begole and Vice Chair Fitzgerald, and other members of the committee, I'd like to first thank you by allowing us to testify in regards to House Bill 4260 and 61. My name is Anthony Hall. I'm a police officer for the city of Livonia. I'm also on the executive board for the Police Officers Association of Michigan. I'm here on behalf of the POAM. POAM is the largest police union in the state of Michigan. We represent over 12,000 officers in the state. I'd like to also thank Reps Harris and Farhat for their leadership in this. POAM strongly supports the bills. We think that this is going to continue to prioritize and give additional funds that not only will be able to increase retention and recruitment, but also provide much needed resources. We understand that there are funds that are going to keep our neighborhoods safe, neighborhoods, cities, communities, and then ultimately, hopefully, the state. And that is our goal, having safer communities and whatnot. So on behalf of POAM, respectfully ask for your support in this House Bill 4260 and 61.
Representative Harris.
Just want to say thank you for coming out. I'm a former local president for POAM, so I'm glad that you guys are here representing, so appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Kennedy from Force Detroit will be speaking in support of.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm DeWanzo Kennedy, Executive Director of Force Detroit. I'm in charge of leading our community violence intervention strategy. We have had tremendous success, I would say. A homicide in Detroit cost the taxpayer $1.7 million. A non-fatal shooting cost the taxpayer 1.1. This was research done by a credible source. In that, we reduced violence in our catchment area or focus area, 4 square mile radius, by up to 70%, consistently over 5 quarters, on average, 50%, meaning if 10 people were shot or harmed, we stopped 5 to 6 of them from being shot or harmed. We stopped the ripple effect of trauma. We don't just prevent or intervene in gun violence. We intervene in generational trauma. What happens when someone has been impacted by gun violence? They remember that. Their families remember that. The person who's caught for doing it remembers that. It causes harm and it perpetuates something that's not humane. I'm here today to advocate for community violence intervention in this public safety trust bill because our chief and those in our city have committed to making sure that our initiative to support and help our community will be sustainable. I think about it in a way of when the fire department started. Now we are professionalized, and we are not individuals who just go out and stop stuff. We have been trained, we have been educated, and we know what we're doing, and it shows in our number. We have statistics, metrics that show what we're doing is effective. I just wanted to say that. I'm open for any questions that you may have about our work.
Hey, Representative Paul?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for coming here today. Can you tell us about what the program does exactly? Like, how do you interact with people to bring their numbers down, basically?
So it's actually the same way you do anything. You build relationships. Once you build relationships, you develop influence. And once you develop influence and you're educated on how to use your influence, you use your influence to mediate and mitigate conflict. I'll give you an example. If you ever been intoxicated and under the influence, and a stranger tried to snatch your keys from you to stop you from driving drunk, more than likely you will resist that stranger, because it's a stranger. But if a loved one, a close friend, family member, took your keys from you, you're less likely to resist that person. So we're able to prevent, intervene, de-escalate, mitigate, because we have relationships in the community, because we're from the community. This is something I encourage everyone who is practicing or a part of public safety to use the community, because you service in the community. To have relationship with community, because you service in the community. You are responsible for community, so it is relationship, but we have been educated on the best practices on how to leverage our relationships to mitigate and mediate conflict, which prevents violence from happening. I like to say this: law enforcement monitors responds, and addresses crime. We monitor, respond, and address disrespect and trauma. If we see someone in a school being bullied, we're going to stop that person from being bullied. We're going to talk to that bully so that that person that's being bullied doesn't come back to that school and shoot everything in that school. We are skilled professionals that are trained to identify trauma in human beings. And we've been successful because we know how to identify those social cues.
Representative Fitzgerald has another question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much for being here today. You know, I think that with regard to community violence intervention, you know, that's exactly it. It's community. It's where people call home. It's where people want to make sure that their community is safe, where they're making the largest impact, and it sounds like you've done just that through your efforts and some of the collaborative efforts that you've made with probably other partner organizations as well as police forces as well. And that's one of the things I wanted to just ask is, you know, as you've built relationships, that's in the community, but it's also with police and public safety officials, and tell us a little bit more about how those relationships that you've maybe deepened within the City of Detroit, the City of Detroit Police Department, and how that's also helped to maybe elevate the impact that you've had in the community.
Yes, so that was one of my reasons for encouraging everyone that's a part of this bill. When it comes to law enforcement, I encourage law enforcement to partner with community-based organizations so they can have the same type of impact that we have in Detroit. So with our law enforcement actually provides us with shooting notifications. If someone is harmed in our community, we know about it, we find out about it, we can go out within 48 hours and address that harm. That community or that portion or part of the community has been traumatized. And law enforcement more than likely don't have the time to sit out there for 2 or 3 hours with a person that's crying. To sit out there, go back and forth and check on people who have seen someone shot, who have seen blood, who have heard sounds, who have experienced something traumatic. But those relationships were developed because our law enforcement in Detroit has developed and built a relationship with community that goes back over a decade. But now that our work is legitimized, and now that we have an opportunity to work 40 hours a week and not have to go to a plant or go wherever and just show up on the weekends, we're able to spend more time developing those relationships and leveraging that influence. And in developing those relationships and leveraging that influence, we have support from our city. And when I say our city, I don't just mean our law enforcement, our city council, our partners, other organizations for wraparound services, things like workforce development, things like cognitive behavioral therapy. We're able to offer things and address violence with a public health approach along with a public safety approach.
And the data reflects it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, I think we got. Thank you for your testimony, and thanks for the work you're doing in your community to benefit everyone. Okay, next, wanting to speak in support of the bill is Ray Winans of the Detroit Friends and Family. Welcome. Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Ray Winans. Can you hear me? Good morning. My name is Ray Winans, founder and CEO of Detroit Friends and Family. Most definitely here to support and advocate for the public trust fund bill. One of the things that we've been able to do is we've been able to support innocent victims. We've supported 87 innocent victims over in our CVI zone. We recognize to what Dewan has just spoken to. For every one homicide, there's 100 non-fatals, right? And so too often people get caught up in the notion of, hey, this individual's been murdered, but we have 100 survivors for every one homicide. Another thing that we've been able to do with DPD is partner for our Safe Surrender program. In the Safe Surrender program, I think myself and Chief Bettison launched that about 8 years ago. But just in the last 2 years, we've been able to safely walk 7 suspected violent perpetrators into police headquarters up under the Safe Surrender. And that affords opportunity for the families to remain safe, police to be able to remain safe, but more importantly, no harm being done no further harm being done in the community. We know that that's a dangerous job. We've experienced an increase in our capacity to provide victim support, right? We're very familiar with VOCA. And so through that, in a partnership with partners, being able to get survivors of violent crime applications in to VOCA. A lot of times the community isn't aware of it. Historically, on the east side of Detroit, you had 2 opposing groups, right, that had been, say for the better word, warring, right? But through these CVI efforts, we've been able to mediate those conflicts and being able to take those individuals and train them up as violence intervention practitioners. And so this right here is a great opportunity for us to continue to legitimize police and community relationships with no further harm being done. And Zoe, you did a phenomenal job too, bro. Like for real, way to represent us. And so with that, I take any questions, and if not, thank you guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next wanting to speak is Dina Bosworth of the Michigan Association of Counties. Welcome, Dina.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Dina Bosworth, Director of Governmental Affairs for the Michigan Association of Counties. I walked in this morning very happy with the introduced version of this legislation from 4260 and 4261. And I do want to thank Representative Harris and Representative Fitzgerald for introducing this legislation again. I worked very hard on it last year. And one of the things that I think is tremendous in this bill is that it finally recognizes the role that counties play in public safety and violence prevention. Last year struggled through many, many drafts of the bills, and even over in the Senate. And the governor's budget recommendation for funding for the Public Safety and Violence Prevention Fund to include the counties in the eligibility for these funds. Absolutely applaud the money that is being carved out. I think that all of the police departments in Michigan, including the sheriff's department, could benefit from additional resources to do the services, to provide the services they do to each community. All of that being said, once I saw the draft or the substitute bills this morning, I realized that they were changed. And so it is no longer, counties itself are no longer eligible for the funds. For counties, it would go straight to the county sheriff's department. And I just want to touch on that a little bit. The original versions provided an extreme amount of flexibility with what counties could do for the funds. And I, again, applaud law enforcement on the ground, absolutely. And I think many, many counties would want to see all of the funds dedicated to the sheriff's department for those services. But we also need to recognize that counties provide courts, drug treatment courts, mental health services that do a significant amount to prevent crime in our communities. We also have an extreme shortage of prosecutors across the state and are struggling all over the state to provide for adequate funds for those other pieces of the public safety puzzle. So with that, I just wanted to put my concerns out there. One other thing I'd like to mention, and thank you, Representative McFall and Fitzgerald, for bringing up the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund, which remains our #1 priority to get it done. And I'm really hoping that these are not competing proposals, but can work hand in hand along with each other. Because in those revenue sharing trust fund bills, there is money to go to each individual local unit of government and provides the maximum amount of flexibility to utilize those funds. But we have not been successful in getting those all the way through the process at this point. And with that, I would like to open it up for questions.
I don't see any questions, so thank you for coming in and
Thank you.
letting us know how you feel. Okay, next, wanting to speak in support of the bill is Matt Sexton, Executive Director from the Michigan Sheriff's Association. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Begol, Sheriff Begol, and members of the committee. Thank you for taking the time to listen this morning. I am Matt Saxton, the Executive Director of the Michigan Sheriff's Association and retired Sheriff of Calhoun County. The Sheriff's Association is the oldest law enforcement organization in the state of Michigan, dated back to 1877. And we represent the collective best interest of the 83 elected sheriffs and their office here in the state of Michigan. On behalf of the Sheriffs of Michigan, I am pleased to offer our strong support for House Bills 4260 and 4261 H1. These bills represent a critical investment in the safety of our communities by creating a dedicated and sustainable funding source for violence prevention and public safety initiatives across Michigan. Sheriffs across the state are committed to reducing violence, improving clearance rates, and building trust through proactive community engagement. House Bill 4260 and 61 empowers local law enforcement and sheriff's offices to direct resources where they are most needed. Whether that is targeted enforcement, community partnerships, or modernizing investigative capabilities, but also including the sheriffs in that, it enables the sheriffs to use those dollars in county jails for programs such as Ignite, which reduces greatly recidivism. And there is typically no funding for sheriffs for those programs within the county jails because of the last presenter talking about needing to operate courts, treatment courts, mental health issues. The jails have become the largest mental health institutions across the state because of failure to provide good, adequate housing for mental health concerns. And my wife always tells me don't go off script, so I just did, sorry. Importantly, this bill rewards accountability and results, ensures funds go to communities working to drive down violent crime. It also includes common sense safeguards that prevent misuse of funds while maintaining local flexibility. We commend the legislature for recognizing the urgent need for sustained public safety funding and respectfully urge your support of House Bill 4260 and 61. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Rep. Harris and Rep. Farhat for their continued work with law enforcement and affected communities on this process. My deputy director has been talking back and forth with Rep. Farhat, and I've been communicating daily with Rep. Harris, and we appreciate their efforts on in bringing this package back and including all law enforcement in this package. I think this goes a long way in creating partnerships, not only with sheriffs and local PDs, but sheriffs and community partners as well. This is the single best funding that I think we could do to drive down violent crime. Rep. Farhat, if you're still here, I would love a copy of the autographed bill, but I look forward to the day that Governor Whitmer puts her autograph on these bills and makes it law. So thank you.
Okay, thanks for your testimony and appreciate the effort that you do for our sheriffs. Okay, next, wanting to speak in support of the bill is Priscilla Burdeo. Did I pronounce that right? Okay, very good. Go ahead and proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, members of the committee, for allowing me to testify today. My name is Priscilla Bordeo from Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice, the largest network of crime victims in the country with almost 8,000 members across Michigan and 4 chapters in the state. As a crime victim, what I want and what our members want most is for what happened to us to never happen again, to us or to anyone else. Establishing a permanent, dedicated public safety fund to support community-based safety efforts will increase safety in our communities. Long-term investments in safety, recovery, and violence prevention are key to safer communities. This fund targets the communities that need it the most, those with the highest concentration of victims and fewest resources. We know that communities that are hit the hardest by violence are often least helped by the justice system. So expanding resources in these communities is key to public safety and to well-being for victims. This fund also expands access to victim services. A 2024 national survey of crime victims by the Alliance for Safety and Justice found that the majority of the violent crime victims received no help from the justice system. So providing funds to local governments to increase access to victims' advocates, shelters, and counseling could make a huge difference in survivors' lives. It will also provide $1.5 million for crime victims' compensation and other services. Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice was very involved in transforming Michigan's victim compensation system 3 years ago. So we know that this funding is desperately needed. This will also fund trauma-informed training for law enforcement, which will help ensure that survivors are met with compassion, not re-traumatization. This fund will also allow communities to deploy trained crisis teams, not just police, to respond to traumatic events, helping victims get immediate emotional support and reducing the risk of escalation or re-traumatization during emergencies. It will also support long-term recovery for victims by allowing municipalities to create or expand community-based programs such as peer support and culturally competent services tailored to basic needs. This fund will also strengthen violence interruption programs by investing in proven community-based programs that intervene before violence happens, helping protect individuals most likely to be victims or repeat victims of crime, particularly in undeserved neighborhoods. And lastly, it will also improve victim outreach by supporting initiatives like mobile victim support units and multilingual outreach campaigns that proactively connect survivors with resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay. Representative Harris does have a question or statement he'd like to make.
Just a statement. It's so valuable to hear from a victim's point of view, so I do appreciate you being here. This is what we're all about. This is why. Our law enforcement, our violence interruption groups, they all need to try and do things that are going to prevent more victims from coming about and to support the ones that we currently have. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I now have another number of cards to read in. Not wanting to speak in support of the bill is Andrew Schwedler of the Detroit Firefighters. Not wanting to speak in support of the bill is Judy Allen of the Michigan Township Association. Not wanting to speak in support of the bill is Jeff Pegg of the Detroit Police and Fire Retirement System. Not wanting to speak in support of the bill is Dwayne Gill of End Gun Violence in Michigan. Not wanting to speak in support of the bill is Brian Schoaf of the Detroit Regional Chamber. Not wanting to speak in support of the bill is John Lamichia of Michigan Municipal League and Urban Core Mayors. And finally, not wanting to speak in support of the bill, I believe it's Connor Spalding, the city of Lansing. Okay, well, that concludes our testimony, so we'll go ahead and vote the bills out now. Representative Vanderwall moves to report House Bill 4260 as substitute H1 with recommendation. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair Bagul,
Yes.
Representatives Harris,
Yes.
Vanderwall,
Yes.
Fitzgerald,
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, House Bill 4260 is reported with recommendation as substituted. Okay, next, Vice Chair Harris moves to report House Bill 4261 as substitute H1 with recommendation. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair Bagul,
Yes.
Representatives Harris,
Yes.
Vanderwall,
Yes.
Fitzgerald,
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
Okay, thank you. House Bill 4261 is reported with recommendation as substituted. Okay, there being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned. Thanks for everybody coming in today.